What is the craziest thing you've gotten away with that nobody has found out about? I'll start. Last year, during McDonald's last Monopoly contest, I won a free quarter pounder. So I cashed it in, and the girl working there absent-mindedly handed me the free quarter pounder coupon sticker thing back. The next day I got another free quarter pounder with the same coupon. In 6th grade my teacher would give us red ticket stubs we could use to redeem for things as a reward for being good and such. One day, I'm at the party outlet store, and I see that they're selling rolls of these exact same stubs. I get some, and end up saving about a dozen for school so as to be inconspicuous. If the teacher saw her ticket system inflating like the German mark in the 30s, she'd get suspicious. Fast forward to Christmas. The teacher announces that we'll have a raffle for some Christmas gifts the last day of school before break, and enter using our tickets. I, along with most other people, had legitimately built up approximately 10 or so, but along with those, I entered in my 12 counterfeits. The day of the raffle comes, and I was blown away. Our teacher went all out on this crap. Giant stuffed animals, board games with metal pieces, articles of clothing, new hardcover books, the works. She starts the drawing for the various prizes, and lo and behold, I'm the first winner. I got a giant stuffed snowman half the size of me, and I had to leave the room to put it in my locker. I come back not 5 minutes later to find that I had won twice more. It was like reverse karma. No problem, except I really don't want to win anything more lest Ms. Teacher gets skeptical. Well, I did keep winning. Between my several trips to the locker though, I think Ms. Teacher re-raffled off some of my stuff as a matter of wealth redistribution, and I was nervous about my scheme imploding on me, so I didn't contest. I ended that day with a giant stuffed snowman, and metal Simpsons chess set, and some new clothing. No one suspected a thing. I had a date in a few days, and then noticed I had a pimple on my ball sack. It was a big one, and was worried it would not go away in time to meet this girl. I had the idea that if I applied water remover, it would speed up the healing process. So on break I went to Shoppers Drug Mart and bought some water remover. Then I went to the bathroom and applied a healthy dose. I went back to my desk, cringing from the pain, but happy that I could feel it working its magic. Then someone complained of a smell in my direction. I panicked, then said, "Yeah, what is that smell?" I stuck my hand in my pocket and felt moisture. Then to my horror, I could feel that I did not tighten the cap of the bottle. I removed the bottle from my pocket, soaked in the stuff and dropped it under my desk, then beelined back to the bathroom. I locked the door, took my pants off and washed the heck out of the pocket, then dried the heck out of my pants. I got back to my desk and felt no one could link me to the crime. Soon people really started to complain about the smell. Then someone walked into the office and said the bathroom stunk like some chemical. Then the managers made us all move to the other side of the floor. My manager said they would bring some maintenance people to investigate the smell. I went pale when I remembered that the bottle was still under my desk. So I slipped away, went the long way around and returned to the other side of the floor. I retrieved the bottle, noticed that the cap was off and the water remover was soaked into the carpet. I then beelined to the bathroom and flushed the bottle down the toilet and snuck back with the rest of the group. We worked away, and then the maintenance guys came and looked for the smell. It was bad. One of the guys got sick, and we were ordered to leave the floor. As we were leaving, I heard a maintenance guy talking about how bad it was and should clear the building. He pulled the fire alarm. We stood outside, and I watched in amazement as floods of people poured out of the 32-story building. Then fire trucks came. An hour went by and we were told it was not safe to return into the building, and they were brining a specialist from Toronto to investigate. We all went home. The next day, I casually asked if they ever found out what the smell was. They never did. I was always a little worried they would see me being suspicious on camera, or something, but no, it was never found what the smell was. It happened when I was in grade 5. It started out like any other morning. I woke up, showered and brushed my teeth, got ready for school. The usual stuff. I guess when I was putting on my clothes in the morning, I didn't take the time to check them out as I pulled them out of the dryer. Fast forward to sometime later that day. While I was sitting in class, there were two girls that sat next to me who were giggling their little heads off. I look over at them and they then point down. As my gaze moves towards the floor, the look of sheer terror on my face must have been priceless. There hanging out the bottom of my pants is a very small, very white and tight pair of very kiddish underwear with a giant skid mark running up the back. These were my underwear. There was nothing I could do. I had been busted. As the girls started to laugh louder, more people started to look, and eventually the teacher called back to see what all the commotion was about. I was fricked. I then did the only thing that I could do. I lifted the underwear as high as I could above my head and told the teacher that some little kid must have left their underwear behind in class. This could have happened over the lunch period. The entire class started roaring with laughter. Kids were laughing at how small they were, the big crap stain, the fact that it was underwear at school. I think the design was like little teddy bears or something, which didn't help either. Like a champ, I sat there stone cold, not even flinching. I held them between B index and thumb in disgust, like what kind of stupid little kid left their underwear under my desk. I even cracked a joke about the crap stain. The teacher saved the day when she said that they were obviously too small and too childish for anyone in the 5th grade and made me throw them in the garbage out in the hall. The whole class moved on and it was never brought up again. When I was in the 5th grade, my class took a trip to Washington, D.C., and part of the trip included a visit to various Smithsonian museums. Since we had a large class, we were split into groups to visit different museums at the same time. I was part of the group who toured the Holocaust Museum. The tour was great, very illuminating for a 10-year-old to be packed into a train car and see the horrifying images of the atrocity. But the tour was the shortest of the 3 groups, so we ended up in the large open lobby bookstore of the museum while we waited for the other groups. During this wait I got bored, and knowing me, I tend to get in trouble when I'm bored, so I looked for something helpful to do to keep me out of trouble. I found a rag and started dusting bookshelves. That lasted for about 2 minutes until I ran out of things to dust and we were still waiting. Then I saw something I'd never seen before, a fire alarm with a very dusty plastic cover on it. I wanted to be helpful, so I went over and dusted it, but most of the dust was on the inside of the cover, so I lifted it, and all heck broke loose. The sound echoed through the entire building, and I was frantically trying to get it to shut off when this enormous security guard came over and slammed the cover shut, then stood over me looking like he was about to eat me. Several people ran for the exits, and a few women I remember screamed at the sudden very loud noise. Everyone was looking at me when it was shut off. I have never since been so absolutely petrified. I have also never been more relieved than when one of the chaperones of our group hurried over to claim me. Epilogue. My teachers were already stressed out with the logistics of keeping so many kids together and safe fed, watered, etc. on this trip that when they called me into their hotel room that night to talk, they all agreed that they wouldn't tell my parents if I didn't, and just left it at that. When we got back home, my parents were excited to tell me that I had received a letter from President Bill Clinton which basically said, "Heard you were in town. Hope you enjoyed your visit." Since I was the only one in my class to get a letter like that, I asked my teachers if they knew anything. They told me that they had been interviewed by Secret Service agents at the museum and were informed that the president was in an office in the building meeting with heads of the museum and had to be evacuated when the alarm sounded. My parents didn't find out until I told them the story 12 years later. How perfectly classy of Clinton. In college, my buddy and I lived near a dude who we saw kick, hit and abuse his dog. When he and his wife were gone on an overnight trip, we broke into their house and took the dog. We had an adoptive family waiting in a nearby town. I felt bad when the woman cried about the dog, but she never stopped her old man from hurting the dog, so I figured it was the right thing to do. If ever there was a man that embodied chaotic good. Once, as a kid, I was in a friend's garden when I made a horrible mistake. I thought I felt a fart coming on, but it was not the case. I crapped my pants. My mum wasn't coming to pick me up for another hour and the horror of being found out wasn't worth it. There was only one option open to me. I promptly climbed to the top of the large tree that the garden contained. My friend couldn't get up because he wasn't quite as acrobatic as I was. I have no idea how I managed to keep up my facade for so long, but I did. Then my mum came and I left with her, coolly explaining the situation after I was away. I guess it doesn't count as no one finding out, but my reputation was unscathed. It was about 3 AM in the financial district in SF, and I was walking home from Minnesota When I saw a balloon was blocking a corner pole type traffic signal, I figured I'd be a good Samaritan and climb up and pull it off. About 2/3 of the way up, the entire pole starting falling over on top of me. I luckily jumped out of the way and watched as it smashed completely through the big plate glass window of the bar next door. No alarms or anything. The streets were deserted, so I ran, went to a payphone and told the police that I had come across a traffic signal smashed through a bar at a certain intersection and went on my way. Clearly the balloon was put there to perfectly balance the pole. In 6th grade, the 6th grade class was rewarded with fake money for being good students. 4 times a year we had this event called Store. With the money that we earned, we were able to purchase and sell items that students brought. Wanting to purchase as much crap as possible, I made multiple photocopies of the fake money. I bought so much freaking candy that year. Applying for college a few years back, I was invited to interview for a USC scholarship. They flew me down the day before the interview and showed the group of candidates the school. I passed by this stand asking people to write a letter to the senator to support DARPA aid. I figured, why the heck not, and wrote one out using their bullet points, since I knew nothing about DARPA. But the girl asking was real cute. Anyway, the next day, the interview was going so-so, and the last question the interviewer asked was, "Do you follow any current events? We like our students to be well informed." Having wasted my life up till then, I immediately blurted out the only current event I could remember, the tragedy in Darfur. I looked him in the eye and made an impassioned speech using the bullet points I had copied down not even a full day before. His jaw dropped at seeing how much I cared and how well read I was and sent me off with a huge grin on his face. 2 weeks later I got a full ride to USC. See, that's just smart. If you are smart enough to cheat the system, you completely deserve it, my friend. Early on during my freshman year of college, I met a really hot Asian girl through a mutual friend. We exchanged numbers and it turned out that she lived 5 floors above me in the same residence hall. Her roommate went home for the weekend, so she invited me to watch a movie with her in her dorm room. Fast forward a bit and we were lying in bed together watching some stupid movie. This led to that, and before I knew it we were making out. The clothes came off. I got on top of her and started kissing her neck. Worked my way down to her T, then to her stomach. You get the idea. Arching up to get a good look at her figure and saw the most horrific sight I've seen in my entire life. Her whole body, from her face all the way down to her vag, was covered in blood. My mind started to race, thoughts flying a mile a minute as I tried to figure out what the frick happened. I noticed that my nose felt runny, so I wiped it with my hand and instantly smelled that all too familiar copper scent associated with a fresh bloody nose. Yup, I effectively slathered my bright red nose blood all over her body. It looked like a murder scene. Thank fricking God the lights were off. The girl opened her eyes a bit and asked me why I stopped. Engage Apollo 13 style problem solving. I could have just told her what happened, only to have my reputation completely freaking shattered the second week into my college career. No way. I could never settle for that. In what was probably less than a second, I assessed the problem and executed the only action I could muster. A quick, "Nothing babe," followed by me retracing the path of blood I lay down on her with my tongue. Yep, I lapped up and swallowed every last drop my blood off of her body. To my astonishment, she didn't pick up the travesty I just navigated through, and we kept fooling around, even hooking up a few more times after the incident. We actually became very good friends and we still hang out from time to time. To this day, she has no idea what happened. I told my best friend this story right after it happened. We now refer to it as the Nosferatu incident. First, you aroused me, then you terrified me, and then just when I thought it was all over you made me giggle like a child. That sounds pretty weird reading it over. Oh well, right on, dude. At 16 years of age, flew to Minnesota to visit a cousin who had a decent amount of land. His dad had a permit to purchase dynamite. They were using it to basically blow a big hole in his swampy yard to make a duck pond. Somehow we got permission from his father to basically play with the stuff under the guise of clearing stumps off his property. When it was time for me to fly home, we still had 20 sticks left, plus a generous amount of det cord and blasting caps. which I talked him into letting me take it all with me. Each stick of dynamite was cut open and the contents stuffed by hand into several 2-liter bottles. Got the worst headache of my life and had my heart racing like crazy from nitroglycerine exposure. These were loaded into my luggage and flew with me back home. Blasting caps were very lovingly packaged and shipped via UPS ground. Kept these under my dresser waiting for the right moment. Fast forward a little over a year where I am working the graveyard shift at a Kinko's in a strip mall and alone to close the store. All the snow from a large parking lot had been pushed into a huge snow ice pile close to 20 feet high in the center of the lot. In the middle of the night, I filled several 5-gallon buckets with hot water and made trips to the top of this ice hill, pouring them to melt in ice hole to the bottom. Prime charge with blasting cap. Lit 5 minutes of fuse and dropped charge to bottom of hole. Then I booked it back to the safety of the closed and dark Kinko's to watch the action from inside. Enormous boom and huge chunks of snow and ice a couple feet in diameter are thrown all over the empty parking lot. About 15-20 minutes later, the parking lot is full of cop cars. They had a car stationed there pretty much 24/7 for weeks. Every time I went to work, I was sure that they were somehow onto me. Never told anyone until now. When I was 16, my friend and I were driving around in his parents' car after they had left town. They told him specifically not to take the car out. We were a little high at the time and were basically just joyriding around. My friend swerved onto the side of the road and lost control of the car. We spun around a couple of times, then bashed against a concrete barrier, totally wrecking the front and passenger side of the car. After checking that we were both okay, we drove the car off onto a nearby dirt road that led to a sugarcane field. This was in Hawaii BTW. Got out of the car, grabbed a fuel can in the trunk, doused the car, lit it on fire, then ran as fast as we could through the cane. About 5 miles of running later, we arrived back at his house and made a pact never to tell anyone what happened. The next morning the cops show up at his house and he tells them that the car must have been stolen in the night and that he hadn't noticed since he was out until the morning with me. Wound up telling his parents the same story. The insurance company did an investigation and wound up covering the cost of a new car. 20-something years later, his parents still believe that the car was stolen that night. We've only spoken about it once since it happened. You said you wouldn't tell anyone. I have a similar story. This was back in high school and during class my period started. I only realized this when I stood up and noticed a big red stain on the seat. I quickly grabbed a tissue and wiped it off during lunch. Fortunately no one had noticed. But when I went to the bathroom I noticed a big reddish brown stain on the bottom of my jeans. It had been raining earlier that day and I walked out of the bathroom quickly to the lunch table my friends were at and purposefully sat down on a seat full of muddy water. I jumped up and made a fuss about my ruined jeans while my friends laughed, but the mud successfully covered up blended with the blood stain. That ended up being my cover story for the rest of the day until I got home and threw my jeans in the wash. Nice cover. Luckily I did have to worry about a stain showing. I went to private school and the underclassmen wore a dark blue and maroon wool plaid skirts. Freshman year of HS I had only been a woman having my period for a few months, so I still wasn't quite familiar with how everything worked down there. It was history class and the end of the day. I had been worried about possible leakage but figured I could make it until I got home. Bell rings. I get up and see red smudged on the seat. Oh no. I sit back down and glance around me pretending I'm waiting for the other students to exit the row so I can get up. I waited until the classroom cleared, stood up, licked my finger and cleaned off the blood. Fast forward to senior year. I'm at retreat and we're broken up into groups of about 10. Classmates were laughing, chatting about the early days of HS when one casually laughs and mentions some girl freshman year bleeding on a seat in so and so's class. I freeze up a bit but fake a grossed out face. He had seen me but forgot it was me. Phew. I read the first sentence and for some reason thought you were a transsexual. In middle school, my brother and I would go do odd jobs for an old man who lived down the street once or twice a week. He was an auction hound, so he constantly had new shipments of junk coming in. We would organize it all, move things around, clean for him, etc. One day, he told us to tackle the biggest challenge of all, the garage. That was where we had thrown all the crap that was too crappy to be organized with anything else. So after hours of sifting through debris, my brother found a small coffee can filled with super glue. We never found out why it was filled with glue, but it was. So my brother, being the semi-arsonist that every boy was in middle school, decided to drop a match into it. Then he took a can of spray paint and made a little flamethrower. As he was going to get more paint, he knocked the can over. So now there's a bunch of flaming liquid on the ground. He decides to throw thick bundles of newspaper on it to smother the flames. Herp derp. The flames got bigger. There was smoke billowing out from underneath the garage door. This guy lived on the corner of two pretty big streets in town. Half the crap in there caught up. I got soot all over me trying to put it out. Eventually, my brother told me to go inside and do something else, and that he would take care of the rest. So I go back in, and the guy asks me why I have soot all over me. I made a curious face and said what. He repeated the question. I told him that it must have been dirt, because I had just been sweeping the garage out rather violently. He squints at me questioningly, and says alrighty. My brother somehow put the fire out. Nobody called the fire department or anything. We even cleaned up the garage after. There are still burn marks on the ground there, though, and 5 or 6 years later, I still have no freaking clue how he put that fire out. When I was 16, I got caught breaking into a hotel pool bar to steal booze. I ran, was chased by cops, evaded them, and hid. They eventually found me, so I ran again. I evaded them again, and managed to avoid being tased. I hid again, found a disguise, left my hiding place, and walked right past them, back to my original hotel. By the time the evening was over, I had spent over an hour evading more than a dozen police officers through 3 hotels and a beach in 2 different outfits. I had more adrenaline pumped through my veins than some people do in a lifetime, and basically made a fool out of the entire police department. Holy crap, that's super crazy. You have been visited by the cute pupper of charisma and flirting. Smooth talking and successful flirts will come to you, but only if you comment, "Hey there, pupper," below this picture. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.